What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome to the 817 podcast. Jimmy and I are going to town with some amazing content for you guys this Sunday. We started at 11:30 interviewing some amazing people, and it's like 2 o'clock now. We still got an interview coming up that's going to be a part of this show for you guys with Dixon, which we had earlier. Jimmy, how are you doing? I know it's been a long day. You holding up okay?
Yeah, I'm doing great. We have a lot of really exciting content to share, and I'm excited to dive into the weekly news and also get to incorporate a lot of the interviews and content that we've had going today. I think there's obviously a ton going on nationally this week, but also a lot happening locally, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, this was definitely like a Fort Worth, I'm stressed out, negative news week for me, and we're going to hit a lot of that, but just to get some information out there for you guys, this is going to be a two-part show because we had a ton of conversations and as well as topics that we just felt like we needed to hit this week, as this was just a big week. But the two-part series is the second part is going to be more of an interview with Professor Krochmal, and I'll have kind of Jimmy share his bio a little bit while I kind of really want to talk to you guys about why we did this. So this Monday is the start of Fort Worth ISD school. And if you remember last kind of discussion, there was a lot around should they push back their start date from virtual to in person. Max, Professor Krochmal, did a piece in the Fort Worth Weekly, an op-ed piece that really kind of talked about this. His wife is also works in Fort Worth ISD. So we got to sit with him and have a conversation with him. And it was really exciting as he's been a part of Tarrant County nearly 10 years.
Professor Krochmal is currently a teacher a faculty member at TCU. He also has an about 500-page book called Blue Texas, The Making of a Multiracial Democratic Coalition in the Civil Rights Era, which details a lot of the history of the Democratic Party in Texas and how we've seen the landscape of this state change over the last 5 to 6 decades. So sitting down with him was awesome. It was really enlightening and insightful, and we're excited to share that as the second part of the episodes this week.
Yeah, and so because of his experience in history and in politics in Texas, we also got off rails and did not just talk about education. We talked about politics, Tarrant County's importance in this election. So again, if you listen to the 817, it is your type of interview, people. I promise you will enjoy it. So let's get ready to start part one and really get ready to get Brian Dixon on the show. So let's first hit a couple of our smaller stories that we really just want to recognize here. And the first one is the one that kind of came out this Friday, which was, I think, on purpose because of the national news.
Friday was doom scrolling day. Like everybody aired out their dirty laundry after waking up Friday morning.
Yeah. And the reason there is because, right, President Trump and him getting hospitalized with COVID-19, him and the First Lady. So a lot of bad news that people didn't want people to hear was cut under the rug, swiped under the rug, which includes our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, whose top aides are accusing him of improper influence, abuse of office, bribery. Several of the most senior employees sent to Human Resource Director a letter saying that they have good faith and belief that the Attorney General is violating federal and or state law, including prohibitions related to improper influence, abuse of office, bribery, and other potential criminal offenses. Why is it important for us to talk about this right off the get-go, Jimmy?
Yeah, so as the Attorney General, Ken Paxton is the highest lawyer in the state of Texas, and he handles a lot when it comes to especially state government officials. Ken is not my favorite person. He is not the favorite person of, I would say, 50% of Texas, at least at this point. This was not surprising for me to see at all, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I thought
Bill Wayburn was not the favorite person.
But there are a lot of potential problems with somebody handling this high level of legal action, potentially taking bribes or misusing his office. He's one of the chief people driving the Supreme Court case to try and repeal the Affordable Care Act. Who's he taking a bribe from to do that? Like, that's a fair and reasonable question for us to ask now. And to look at the scope of how this affects Tarrant County, like, there are a lot of state decisions being made based on his office's work. And
what is your take on what are you looking to see as this story continues to develop? Because it seems like we're still in the intro.
Yeah, it seems very intro. Hopefully, with this letter that went to State Human Resources, we will potentially get some details of everything going on. I don't know when he comes up for election again, but I am very excited to vote him out if he isn't in jail by that point for these violations. So I'm interested to see specifically what he has potentially misused office or taken bribes for, especially related to the Affordable Care Act, which is obviously super relevant right now with the Amy Coney Barrett announcement as the Supreme Court nominee, aka the super spreader event of the week. There's a lot of ties in right here where how this relates to the national landscape right now, because I believe it's November 10th that this goes in front of the Supreme Court.
No, I think this is all just a big part. I mean, this was such a stressful week of news nationally, locally. From the debate was a debacle. I don't mean you even have a chance to really talk about the debate. Our big story this week and what we're going to talk to Brian about is around the debate and how Fort Worth was mentioned in the debate. And so it just shows the case of like the difference between power and how power can be exposed and why it's important for us to get involved and to activate. The whole idea that Fort Worth hasn't really had great turnout in voting or even being informed. Our largest numbers of people who've actually gone out to elect these kind of officials like Mr. Paxton is, I think our best is 9%, but we're looking at more 5% of our population actually goes out and votes for our local officials. Well, I really want to kind of now just kind of flip this to also really getting prepared to talk to Mr. Dixon and Dr. Dixon and get your take on the national news and how Texas is playing and how Fort Worth is playing based off of what you saw in the debate, what you saw among, what's your take on this whole COVID stuff with Trump? Because I feel like Trump is an embodiment of what I feel like how Fort Worth, Texas is treated. COVID, like not a big deal. Let's keep on partying and drinking beer. And we're seeing still high cases, high hospitalizations. So what's your take there?
Yeah. So 2 days ago, Texas passed California to be the number 2 death state in the U.S. Obviously, there's different per capita, especially when you're looking at New Jersey and New York, but those were the places that got hit first. They're obviously going to take the brunt of it as we've learned to treat it better and whatnot. I mean, yesterday there was an incident at a Buc-ee's in Denton where a Trump supporter assaulted a peaceful protester just standing there holding a sign, and now he's arrested for that. I feel like some people might be wishing the worst on President Trump, and I would urge you to think about the chaos that will happen if a major presidential candidate is not around anymore, if he dies after the election has actually started. Like, mail-in ballots have been mailed out everywhere. Millions of people have already voted. Like, what happens?
Well, what is you're and we were talking about how they're showcasing, like, the news just as we record, they're talking about, he'll be out of the hospital Monday. And you're like, I don't know how much I can really believe what's coming out of the doctors right now in this situation.
Yeah. I mean, especially yesterday. So Saturday morning, the doctor came out. He accidentally let slip that Trump had COVID for 72 hours when everyone was under the impression it had been 36.
So meaning during the debate.
Yes. So he showed up late to the debate and therefore was not able to receive a COVID test. You can make what you will of if that was purposeful or not. He's in the hospital. It's come out as information that at least on Friday he had a 103-degree fever and was on oxygen. It's come out that he's been having some heart palpitations. And then all of a sudden, a few hours later, the doctor comes back out and gives this very standard, watching that interview, I would encourage you to do so. Contrasted with the interview he did on Saturday morning, felt very propaganda-ish in the second interview. And that is consistent with some of the photos that we've seen coming out of them saying that he's diligently working and he's just writing his name in big Sharpie on a blank piece of paper. To people saying that this might be a hoax, he's faking it. Like, just think about who he is. That's not consistent with the way he wants to be perceived. To people saying that the Democrats planted it on him, he potentially had this virus at the debate, a debate in which Fort Worth was mentioned and maybe not in the brightest of light.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is going to be a great conversation that we're going to have with Dr. Brian Dixon. So let's go ahead and get ready to hear him out and talk with him. We've already mentioned kind of his bio on previous podcasts around the well-being of Fort Worth in the 817 podcast. So that's one of our first episodes. If you have not heard Brian talk about the overall well-being of Fort Worth, Brian is a national speaker, an author, an advocate for reform on the medical health system. He is a psychiatrist, a business owner, and also a resident of the 76104 area code, which is also what we're going to be able to talk to Brian about and get his takes on. So let's get ready to talk to Brian. Really, Brian, just thank you just being a friend and someone that we always look forward to talking to. And I would just like to get, what is your take on all of the negative news that you've seen? What is really hitting your soul that's firing you up right now? And how are you just like taking it all in?
Yeah, so thanks for having me back, guys. It's always a pleasure to talk to y'all. I think the thing that kind of knocked me for a loop, because at this point I kind of expect bad stuff, and so I'm gearing up and I'm putting up my defense mechanisms to make sure I can handle it all. But I think the thing that really kind of caught me by surprise was during the debate when Chris Wallace lobbed a softball at the president and said, "Hey, will you just say that white supremacy is bad?" And all the president had to say was, "White supremacy is bad," and we would have moved on. And he didn't. Yeah. And that just blew me away.
Well, that sort of there was an article recently about how Fort Worth and Tarrant County needs to be on alert because the FBI had received intel that there would be potential increased activity from the Boogaloo Boys in the coming weeks in the area.
Yeah, that was in the Dallas Morning News this weekend. So that the report leaked September 29th that hey, there's been sayings or things that we've been seeing that could happen in North Texas.
Change is hard. People have a very difficult time, especially when there's not a fire directly up under you. People have a very difficult time moving. You can use the frog in the pot analogy. You can use whatever analogy you want to. So it's human nature to try to keep status quo if it's not bothering you, right? So the key is, how do we get it to start bothering people without without inconveniencing them. And y'all, I don't think it's possible. I think we have to bother folks. I think we have to agitate and aggravate and hope that they will change. I don't know. I don't know what y'all think.
And I think that's related to Fort Worth coming up in the presidential debate of there is a lot of agitation happening nationwide, and it is creating a lot of change that has been made to be tied to a partisan thing. But the Chris Wallace lobbed up, hey, Fort Worth and Tulsa both have increasing homicide and violent crime rates, and they are Republican-led cities. It sort of led our mayor and a couple other people in Fort Worth to come out and say, we don't believe this is a partisan issue. How do you think that's something that we help dictate to people, that this is not a partisan thing? This is a violence and hate are being spewed from high national level people, and how do we create change around that?
That's an excellent question. I think change starts at the head, right? So I was watching Scandal the other day, and I think Olivia Pope's character said, the fish rots from the head, right? So it's the same idea here, which is we have to get our leadership to believe that it's a problem. And so I would put to the mayor, make sure you surround yourself with lots of black folks, because if you surround yourself with a lot of black people right now, they're going to tell you things are not going well. So I normally I don't talk politics with my patients, but I had one patient pull me to the side and said, no, I really want to know how you're doing. And I said to him, I'm not doing great. I like all of my black friends, we are tired. We are exhausted. And at the end of the day, we can't take 4 more years of this. I mean, we can, but the toll is going to take on our mental health and our physical health and the whole 9 yards it's bad. And so I would put to the leadership of Fort Worth, if you're serious about fixing violence, police violence, racism, and you don't want to be mentioned in a debate, a national debate about violence and racism, then it starts at the head, and you have to take it seriously.
You saw that. I mean, I don't know if, when Mayor Betsy Price shared that information, we were nearly double the homicide of Austin, which I thought was kind of funny because Austin defunded we're relatively same in population, and they're defunding their police, but yet we had more. And she's the one who posted it, so I thought that was very she was this is our stance. And then if you look at the data, it's Austin was right there, and we were nearly twice. I wanted to say
and Republican leaders are putting billboards outside of Austin saying, go into Austin at your own risk. They're defunding the police here. And it's okay, well, if we're looking at our city, we have, for the last 4 years, have had double the homicide rate of Austin, a city that is Democratic run. It was just one of those things where, like you said, what we want Fort Worth mentioned as part of on a national scale when there are a lot of good things happening in the city? It's
frustrating. If it's not directly in front of you, then you have the privilege of ignoring it, right? So unless a family member for the city council and the mayor, unless a family member is actively suffering from something, they're not going to be as motivated to move. So, and you can see this play out nationally, right? So Chris Christie is I don't really believe in Corona. I'm not going to wear a mask, whatever, right? And then he gets sick. And he, some kind of way, gets admitted to a hospital when other people are getting turned away, right? So it's not a problem until you use your privilege, and then So I'm not saying that I want anybody's family members to be profiled or shot and killed or transgressed upon, but unfortunately, I don't know how else to get their attention.
Well, what is as a medical professional, what is your take on the Trump, the president and the first lady getting COVID, the news that is coming out? That's what's your take?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it comes down to common sense. So the messaging out of I'm telling you, y'all, it's just the messaging out of the at the national level has been bad, and so it's very nature abhors a vacuum. So in other words, if you don't have information in certain places, people are just going to fill in what they think is best. And so since the beginning of this pandemic, we were in a containment strategy, very much, stay at home, shelter in place, but we never sent the follow-up messages, which is, okay, let's switch to a management strategy. This is how you manage your risk. You wear a mask. This is why you would wear the mask. If you're going to eat outside, make sure, if you're going to go out to eat, make sure you eat outside. Ventilation is key, y'all. It is key. The more fresh air you get, the lower the density of the virus, if it is aerosolized, right? All of that stuff, and I'm a psychiatrist, all of that stuff is just gone. Like, there's no national messaging, no national strategy, and that, to me, is just really stupid. And so, yes, what happens when you do stupid things is you get sick. And so, they had a debate, or not a debate, they had the Supreme Court nomination thing, and people were sitting right beside each other. And, I mean, what do you think is going to happen? He's thinking of himself as himself, and he is not. He is the president of the nation. Yeah. So this is one time when you don't get a personal privilege. You have to do what's best for the nation, and he screwed that up. So
yeah, one thing I was saying to EJ earlier is I just sort of assumed he had already had it at some point and was asymptomatic and wasn't going to tell anybody, which it seems like that was his plan here. Now that we've had leaks that he probably had the virus at the debate, it seemed like he was just going to try and skirt by and not tell anybody. It's obviously a worst case scenario with the leader of any country, whether you like him or not, whether he is spewing hate speech or not, this close to an election, to be in a life or death scenario. Do you have advice for people on how to stay focused on the election and everything else that is going on, rather than maybe getting bogged down in some of the worst case scenarios of if he passes or what this could do for the upcoming election?
Yeah, it goes back to the idea that all politics is local, and it also comes down to kind of all biological threats are also local. So in other words, don't pay attention to what's going on nationally. Wash your hands, social distance. You better vote. Make sure you vote early if you can. If you have an absentee ballot, fill it out. Make sure it gets to where it needs to go. Because at the end of the day, you have to do. It's an individual action that's going to make the biggest change. Because as you can tell, white supremacy is a big deal. It seems to have tendrils and avenues and privileges that just seep into everything and everywhere. And the only way you can get in front of that is by voting and creating community connections that can push against that level of privilege.
I don't know if you saw that article actually in Star Telegram around systemic racism in Fort Worth and the 76104 area code. Really kind of well done reporting. Obviously up your alley. You know a lot of this. What was your take of that just coming out to the public, and what would be something you would add or maybe give thoughts to, as that's now on top of people's conversation here in Fort Worth, is the life expectancy being what I think it was 12 years under.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the worst area code in the state of Texas when it comes to life expectancy?
A lot of that data had come out earlier, I think, either not last this year. I think it was actually late last year. Yeah. And so, the article wasn't unexpected, but it just goes to show that we are kind of screwed. And the COVID-19 numbers, especially for African Americans, and the COVID-19 deaths, I think it's 1 in 1,000 Black people are dying from this virus. It's all very sobering. And so I read an article, I can't remember where it was from, but one of the things that this particular author said is that even though this is a tragedy, this is also an opportunity to change, to do some fundamental change. And at the end of the day, this virus does its best work, and I put that in quotes, but it does its best work in people who are overweight, hypertensive, diabetic, and have other underlying diseases. And so this is where it's a wake-up call for everybody, but especially people of color and communities of color, to make sure that we're walking more and working on the systemic causes that exacerbate all of those diseases. And sometimes that's our food that we're eating because it's too sugary or too salty. It's our portion control. It's our government subsidies of food and where we put our money in farm subsidies. But it's also our neighborhood safety, right? So you can be outside and doing more things when you feel more safe. So there's lots of different nuances to this whole entire thing. I could take up forever talking about it, but I'm hoping that more Black folks are going to start eating more plant-based diets. I'm not saying you have to go full vegan or vegetarian, but more plant-based, smaller portions, move more, get sleep, treat your trauma, talk to a therapist, because if we're going to survive this as a culture, as a Black culture, we got to make some changes.
What would you like to see in historic Southside? What kind of development?
Yeah, so EJ, it's always money. Give me money, and I can do all sorts of stuff. So so the story behind the best example or the best corollary would be what happened over in the Near South Side. So with Near South Side Inc. Incorporated. So some guy, 30 years ago said, I believe in this area and I'm going to work to change it. And he went door to door and business to business. And he has the privilege. And again, this is where privilege is super important because he's a white dude. And when he asks banks for money, they give it to him. Or he has connections to capital, right? So I'm a Black dude, degreed and well-moneyed, and I can't get any support, right? Even though I'm trying, I go beg and plead and I dance and do everything I can, and there's nothing. So when you have a dedicated operational machine, somebody who has the time and money and energy to build, to recruit developers and to recruit businesses, that's how you improve it. So so if somebody on the podcast wants to give me a few $1 million so that I can do nothing but devote it to development on this side of the tracks, on this side of the highway, then I will gladly do so. In the meantime, I'm just going to keep being patient and doing what I can do to get the word out. But you have to have a concentrated effort to operationalize this in order to make it effective.
I think with an upcoming mayoral election and with a lot of the city council members being up for election next year, I wonder how this could be a major platform for Deborah Peoples running for mayor or for city council members. Is how can we, now that a lot of this information is being spread around and is widely available, how can we capitalize on that to use this information to disrupt and to get it in people's faces and make change? It feels like there's an opportunity right now to help push that. And obviously we have an election in November to get through first that, I mean, it's just going to wear all of us out. But looking towards next summer when we do get to elect a new mayor, I'm wondering how we can potentially try to be in the ear of people to make this something that is important to the next mayor and next set of city council members.
I would say it comes back to the money side of things. This is where I really wish it were illegal for a police union to give donate money to city council people. So at the end of the day, because it creates a huge conflict of interest, especially with the Fort Worth Police Officers Association. Their goal is to keep everything the same. They have, and by giving money to candidates who have not done what they're supposed to be doing, that creates a very, very difficult messaging apparatus to fight against, right? So the city council person in my district, what has happened? Nothing, right? Yeah. So nothing has happened over the last 2 years. Yet that person continues to get funded by apparatuses apparati like the Police Officers Association. And so what does that say? It says that at the end of the day, the individual voice doesn't matter because the people in this district don't have the money to spend a whole lot of money to donate to any type of campaign. But we also need a person to run. So, and I was threw myself into the running the last time, but then realized, you know what, that is going to take a lot of time that I didn't have at that time. So to make a long story short, yes, it should be an issue. I'm not sure how we can make it an issue. One good thing, so Councilwoman in Zeta District 9, she is on it. And, I'm going to different events and townhomes and doing things, and I see her everywhere. So I'm hopeful that maybe in time, with the redistricting plan that's going to be happening, that maybe we will get folks in there who are, thoughtful and actually want to affect change.
And sort of the reverse of the Police Officers Association point also is that for Prop A, the mayor and city council members that receive money from the POA were paying to run Facebook ads in favor of Prop A over the summer. Obviously, it's just sort of the cycle back and forth of money between them. But to your point, it's how do we disrupt the messaging when someone has a lot more resources to be spending on Facebook ads?
Absolutely. So I actually have an idea, and y'all will be the first people to hear it outside of my little think group that I'm working with. One of the things that I think we need to do in Fort Worth is give the Police Officers Association some competition. So there are two other police officer associations, the Black one and the Latino one. They have much longer names, but y'all can look that up. And the idea is that right now the regular Police Officers Association has I think it's called a meet and confer agreement. It's basically an agreement between the city and the union for the union to represent the officers' interests. Well, if there's some kind of way that we can, as a community, beef up and support the other two police officer associations, and then all three of them go and compete with this, they go compete against each other to get the meet and confer agreement. I think that would be a really creative way of, number one, not defunding the police, because again, I think that whole thing is weird. But more importantly, you increase the quality of their pitches, right? Because the city could then go, you know what? The regular Police Officers Association, y'all don't have enough diversity training. We're going to go with, the Latino group or the Black group or whatever. So it's a nice capitalist end runaround. So I'm working on that idea. Once I get it all fleshed out, I'll let y'all know.
Oh, that'd be great. We would love to hear more. And I still I know it's already coming down to 3:00. I can't wait to have a beer. We got to have a beer, real life, and we got to strategize. I want some ideas on a napkin. I want some vision with some French fries. I'm excited to just be able to be a part of your umbrella in any way. 817 podcast as a team could be helpful. Lastly, I guess before we let you go, is just how do you feel Terrence going to do and Texas is going to do this November? You think blue's in the horizon, or we're going to not pull it off?
I think blue is on the horizon. I think that this administration, the national administration, has done such a horrible job, and it has affected all corners of right, left, center, that people are going to do what's best for them and their neighbors and change, even though they may have to hold their nose and vote for the blue. I think they're going to make the right call. And then once we get back to politics as usual, once Biden is elected, I'm sure once the Supreme Court is, Barrett has been placed on the court, we can go back and, figure out what we're going to do and get back to politics as usual. But I'm hopeful and confident that yes, we're going to elect Joe Biden and Harris, and then we can sort everything else out. Hopefully November 3rd, but rumor has that it may be, January. And yes, he will leave that White House. I don't care what he says. We will find a way to have a good transition of power.
I don't think he needs blue to do that. Obviously, he needs Texas to win the election. But do you think Texas can show blue on the map when they show?
I think it'll be. I don't know. I know it'll be purple because, I mean, what happened with Beto was very inspiring. So, you know what? I'm just going to speak it into existence. Yes, it will go blue. It will be awesome. It'll be a landslide.
Yeah, we hope so too. And again, always just thank you for being on the show. I know you're a busy guy, and I'll text you some dates. You're probably, I don't know what dates are better for you, but you know. Yeah,
Fridays are always the best days. So you just let me know.
Friday, I'm clearly wide open this next Friday, so it looks like we'll find some lunch, and I'll cover this for all the amazing stuff you do for 817 as well. You know, get you some food in your belly and some beers in your heart, and go from there.
I love it. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it, and thank you again for having me on. It's great.
Love it, man. I'll send you some dates. Some time.
All right, bye, y'all.
All right, that was Dr. Dixon. We love having him on the show. We think he provides some really great insight, and is just an incredibly intelligent person to get to talk to. So he makes EJ and I look a lot smarter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get to our wins and losses for the week. I'll start with my win, and that is that there are organizations on TCU's campus that are going to be meeting to talk about what should be done with their founder's statue. Addison and Randolph Clark. It sits right off of University as you're driving through campus. To put it frankly, like, they're racist. And in light of the Black Lives Matter movement for equality in every way in this country, part of that has been taking down monuments and statues that represent the Confederacy or people who were racist and really built structures for systemic racism in this country. I think it's a win that conversation is even happening. Who knows what's going to come of it, but I think that it shows a good step for TCU to be having that conversation and to set an example in Fort Worth for what that conversation looks like. TCU has a lot of other issues when it comes to systemic racism, between lawsuits happening. There's so many ways that they can still improve, but I think that this is an important conversation that they're getting to have.
Yeah. There's a lot around TCU and the lack of diversity in students, and the overall just bubble feel of TCU being just a private school. And so the fact that they're even having tough conversations like this it's nice to see. And I know how that can be difficult, because if you look at a lot of historic colleges, odds are their founders were probably racist in some capacity.
Absolutely.
So what is your loss?
My loss is a physical loss for the city of Fort Worth, and just something really sad. Antonio Robinson was a Black man living in Fort Worth. He answered the front door to his Fort Worth home last Sunday night to a white neighbor who has consistently harassed his family since they moved into that house. And that man shot Robinson at least 5 times and murdered him on his doorstep, where the son of his 9-year-old girlfriend is the one having to call 911 as she's tried to stop his bleeding. I won't name the man who committed this crime, because I don't think he needs that recognition. He's also a registered sex offender. But
do we know anything of, like, was this was this a racial tension thing? Like, or was this person like
it seems
a boogaloo? Because supposedly we got a lot of them coming out, and here in North Texas, ready to start some ruckus.
From the information that we have, there's nothing necessarily linking him to that, but it does appear that it was a racially motivated hate crime. That after this family moved into the house next door, he was consistently harassing them at any opportunity that he had, and ultimately it led to him murdering this man on his doorstep. It's just incredibly sad. a really somber reminder of where Fort Worth and the country still stands in a lot of ways.
I feel so bad for this loss, and also that the 9-year-old kid to have to see this kind of experience. And so that is a big loss. And I hope there's a lot more that comes out to it that we can learn from, and how, we have to be good neighbors. And I think we're going to talk about the Fort Worth Magazine. We have a show coming out with them around one of their recommendations to make Fort Worth even better is about being a good neighbor.
Yeah. Embracing our diversity. If you are not a person of color, like, there is a lot that goes into, like, make sure you are looking out for the people around you who could be targeted in times right now where hate crimes are hitting all-time highs.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and hit my wins and losses. And so my win for this week is actually something that comes back from what we talked about last week, and that was the Fort Worth police officer who did the meme about a black man in a casket was effectively fired. And so that was big for us. Do you have anything around that you want to say?
Get him out of here. Make sure he can never be a cop anywhere else. Even though it took 11 or 12 days or whatever, glad that this is how this played out. I hope he is never able to be a police officer in any place ever again.
And my loss for this week is really something that I think is just impacting all of us as we wait to know if there's going to be more support to the American people when it comes to stimulus checks to support all the loss, because there's just massive layoffs you see nationally with Disney losing 29,000 employees. You also have American Airlines, who last week shared that they're going to be furloughing up to 19,000 workers. Oof. And as assistance from the federal government never kind of reached a deal. People have been waiting. People have been holding on companies. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of this. And so the move won't be a surprise to supposedly the flight attendants, the pilots, maintenance workers. In all, at least 40,000 American airline workers, about 30% of Fort Worth-based companies' workforce, has lost their jobs because of this pandemic. So this is a big hit. And
just know this is something you should be angry about. American Airlines and all of the major airlines over the past 5 years have spent billions of dollars buying back stock to increase the wealth of their executives and their major shareholders. And they received billions of dollars in stimulus when most people got a $1,200 check what feels like an eternity ago. Yeah. This company should not be in a position where it is laying off this many people. And another loss for Fort Worth between American Airlines, Pier 1. It's only been a few years since Radio Shack folded. Lockheed has cut jobs here. Just another big loss to the North Texas economy.
Yeah, and this actually even reminds me of another podcast we're going to have out for you guys around innovation in Fort Worth and startups, and how Fort Worth really lags in that area. We had a great conversation with Cameron Cushman out of UT Health Science Center and his pod, Innovate Fort Worth. Check that one out as you want to talk about where is the future ecosystem of job creation and successful companies in Fort Worth. Before we go, though, there's this one more thing we had to hit, and that was the loss of 21-year vet Mitch Mitchell. A reporter at Star Telegram passed away after collapsing last Sunday in his home. He is also a journalist of color, which I think really provided a diverse perspective for so long in Star Telegram, and being able to be a consistent voice there. So rest in peace, and hope his family is doing okay. And that's all we really know about it, was just a collapse. It'd be awful to know if it had anything to do with the pandemic. But prayers to the Mitchell family. Also, make sure you check out part 2 of this week's podcast. I'm telling you, Professor Krochmal really provided some value around what to expect from the start of school, but also little predictions around the upcoming mayoral election in 2021, and just has a breadth of knowledge when it comes to Tarrant County politics. So I highly recommend to give that a listen. So peace and enjoy.
Dopamine swipe, follow us like double tap. Now they control your life, control your life.